Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Committee on Housing and Economic Development. I am Senator Chip Curry. I'll be serving as our chair. We are convened today for language review. And so let's get started with introductions. I'll ask the member to the far right, my far right.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mark Mallon. I represent House District 133, part of the great city of Biddeford.
Good afternoon. I'm Cheryl Golick. I represent House District 99, which is all of Harpswell and part of Brunswick.
Good afternoon. I'm Yusuf. I represent District 118, part of Portland.
I'm Senator Donna Bailey. I represent Senate District 31, which is Buxton, Old Orchard Beach, and Saco.
Good afternoon. My name is Rick Bennett. I have the honor of serving the people of 14 towns in Western Maine in the state Senate across parts of Androscoggin, Cumberland, and Oxford counties.
And to my physically far left.
Hi there, I'm Cassie Julia. I represent HD 65, which is half of Waterville.
Hey, I'm Grayson Lookner. I represent House District 113. It's part of Portland.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tracy Gear. I represent House District 134, which is Kennebunkport and Coastal Biddeford and Kennebunk, and I am the House Chair of the committee.
And again, Senator Chip Curry, and I represent the 26 rural, coastal, and island communities of Waldo County. And with that, we're gonna let's talk about the language review in the order that we have planned. We're gonna start with our two economic development related bills, and our analyst Sophie Patton will be leading us on that. We're gonna start with LD 1865, then go to LD 2224, and then we'll shift over to the housing bills. And the housing bills are going to go in order of LD 2097, LD 2230. LD 2231, 2149, wrapping up with a simple bill 2173. And with that, and I'll say those again when we shift over to housing. So let's open up no, we don't have to open up anything. We've opened up the work session. Let's talk language review.
So this is for LD 1865, pink sheet you should all have, and then my handwriting on the top. Maybe, I'm not sure if that's on your copies, but in the corner it says 1865. This is a resolve to create a tax incentive pilot project to encourage business to adopt a 4-day work week. You've seen this language before at a preliminary language review, at which I indicated that because it has to deal with a tax expenditure program, it was subject to a tax expenditure review. I sent it over to the tax committee. The analysts consulted with OPEGA, who indicated that because it's a pilot project, it does not have to undergo the tax expenditure review. So with your approval today, we can go ahead and get this started to be reported out. One change that I did want to bring your attention to from the language that you saw at the preliminary language review is that in section 2 of the bill, there was previously language that read that notwithstanding any provision of the Maine Revised Statutes, Title 36, Section 5219-FF, which is a section of law that establishes the wellness credit, which is what these employers would be subject to. After Ross consulted with me and MRS and decided that that language did not need to be in there because it was actually kind of accidentally included in this and was originally in previous iterations of the draft, but the draft that you see before you did not need that notwithstanding language. It is my understanding that in the removal of that language, it alleviated and addressed a lot of the concerns that MRS raised with the committee amendment. And so I did just want to flag that to you, but other than that, the language is exactly as you saw it at preliminary language review a couple of weeks ago.
For those that were in the OPPAS as amended report, does that match what any concerns? Senator Bennett?
I have no concerns. I appreciate that clarity. Sophie, this is my bill that I worked with the administration on to get it to a place where I think it works really well. We also have, just for the committee's information, we have the folks down at the Rue Institute are keenly interested in working with the DCD and collecting this data and willing to do that with no cost to the state. So I'm hoping that we can get this over the finish line. I know that it was divided out of the committee, but we just ask for your, those of you who may have been on the other side, give it a favorable view when it hits the floor of the House and the Senate. So thank you.
Excellent. So that looks okay.
And then the second bill you have for me is LD 2224, which is an act to reduce certain costs associated with residential construction. As you know, this went out for electronic language review on Friday and was due back 10 a.m. Monday. During that time, I did receive a comment from GoPIF that perhaps in the membership section of the bill, paragraph L, which is on page 2. In drafting that, the committee's intent was to add an affordable housing expert to the board of MUBEC. The language that I used to draft that, I think, could be improved to better reflect the intent of the committee, and GoPIF flagged that and provided a possible amendment language for the committee to consider, and Sandlin can pass that around. It would just be changing real estate and development to affordable housing. So it would read an affordable housing expert recommended by a statewide association representing affordable housing interests. This would not require a reconsideration because it is in line with the intent of the committee. If you do want to update the language, with what was suggested by GoPIF. Again, in looking at what I drafted, I do think that the suggested language does perhaps better reflect the intent of the committee.
Is the committee or any members of the committee opposed to the white sheet? Does any member see any other issue with language? Does it reflect our vote? All right, thank you. And thank you, Ms. Patton. I don't think we'll see you in front of us.
You will not.
Unless. Okay, I will interpret that. I'll be pondering that. We'll miss you. Have a good day to you. Welcome. And let's see, we're going to start with LD 2097.
That's correct, Mr.
Okay.
Chair. And this you should have a purple document for, which is, and I will tell you, with most of mine, this is not the final language review. This is the initial language review. The next language review, the final one, will be when it's gone through the Ross process, and it will be done electronically. And so you'll be getting an email with the final Ross version. We're having language reviews today on some of these bills because I want to make sure that you've had a chance to weigh in together. So this was the bill, an act to modify the laws governing revocation of a code enforcement officer certification. And you'll recall there was a FOA exception, and Senator Curry and I went in front of the Judiciary Committee, and they produced a letter, which is the purple document you have. And what they found is that they did not think the FOA, they thought the FOA exception was actually too narrow and did not sufficiently protect the code enforcement officer's privacy interests. So you'll recall that FOA balances the public's interest in having access to records and an individual's interest to privacy. And they had quite a robust discussion. Sorry, was this you, Representative Gear? This was Representative Gear. I apologize. And Representative Gear and Director Horn, who answered quite a lot of questions from the Judiciary Committee. So they thought, the committee thought it was too narrow and that the exception should be expanded. So currently the exception keeps confidential complaints, charges, accusations of misconduct, replies to those. That may result in suspension or revocation. So that is a very narrow group of disciplinary action or complaints. So they are suggested that what the exception should cover, what the exception should cover is all complaints, charges, or accusations of misconduct, replies to those complaints, charges, or accusations, and any other information or material that are considered by the division director or the committee. And I believe on the last page of the last purple sheet, you'll see the two provisions in the current bill and you'll see in the second section, I've crossed out the phrase that may result in suspension or revocation of a certificate. So that is what the Judiciary Committee suggests, that you actually broaden this by striking out that phrase. What that means is the complaints and all the investigations are confidential. Any written decision and findings are public. If the complaint, if a decision is appealed, whether a adjudicatory hearing or in a court, then of course, the information that supports the decision becomes public. So in a court, it would be discoverable within a internal process. It would be discoverable pending it being protected by like HIPAA or something like that. So that was their recommendation, that we remove part of that phrase in section 4451H. And I believe the committee had talked about hearing what the Judiciary Committee said and then deciding whether you wanted to respond in accordance with their recommendations.
My recollection was that the intention was to respond with their recommendations. With those recommendations, this can be a technical, it's not a substantive change.
No, because I agree. I think you as the people who voted on this, were going to take their recommendations as what you would do next.
Does anyone disagree that this was the intent of the committee? Okay.
Okay,
And I'll add that it was really helpful, and I think we threaded the needle correctly here. And I think we gave the Judiciary Committee a fun thing they really got into this one. So it was great to give our legal beagles something to sink their teeth into. So this was a good one.
Yeah, they're not busy at all.
They did, they really got.
Excellent. So
so next we'll move to LD 2230, which you should have a pink sheet. And again, this is the first language review, not the final. And this is an act to invest in the construction of industrialized housing. This bill is very close to final from the Ross perspective. The first thing I just want to note is on the vote tally sheet on the first page. This bill was seconded by Representative Gear, and that has been fixed in the official record, but I had printed this out previously and I didn't want to kill any more trees, so I left that as it is. The one thing I want to point out to you is that on page 2, in the subsection 3, so this is the Industrialized Housing Incentive Program. And you'll recall it was originally proposed to allow for grants and loans. And you decided to only do grants. But in the middle of that subsection 3, it says administered by the department as a revolving non-lapsing interest-bearing fund. It will not be a revolving fund because it's for grants. So I'm just seeking your consent that I can take out a word from this that actually does not apply based on other decisions that you made.
So for those who are on the majority report, which would include Curry, Bailey, Bennett, Gear, Golek, Julia, Lookner, Mallon, and Youssef, does that match with your intention? Okay. Yep.
So I have two relative videos. One has big pages. Big pages, so it was they're supposed to be the same.
Is one not front to back? Does one have a front to back? Well, I've got two, but one's front to back.
So I have three, one has 3 pages. With different coordinated circles on it.
Can you share that with our analysts?
One doesn't have anything on it, up 2 pages.
Good.
I'm just trying to clarify.
Let's see what you got there.
So if any of the rest of you have a second 2230, what you have is actually it's almost final. As soon as I leave the room, Ross is going to make it final and I'm going to send it to you again version.
Okay.
And it looks like a final Ross document. It's 2 pages. It has language. It looks like a Ross document. It doesn't have all the language. It says online 20 page 2, strike the word revolving. So if you all have that, you have the original version with all of the language changes and the Ross version. But again, this is not, we're still waiting for the fiscal note on this one. So it isn't in the stage where I would send it to you and say, is this final?
And we'll see that as email.
Yes, you will see
It's
that as
actually
email.
stamped Ross.
Yes. But that doesn't mean it's the final final. It's booked.
Okay, so I found the other one, which he wasn't.
Yeah. Very good.
That's
For those who are on the support, those who are on the majority, passes amended. Any concerns on that? Excellent. 2231, we're on, those who just entered, welcome. We are on 2231. The next up would be 2149. The next up would be 2173.
So 2231, you should have the pink packet that was handed out last week, and you should also have a yellow cross colored document. So this is 2231, which is an act to support owners of manufactured housing, mobile homes, and tiny homes. And you have both the majority and the minority report. The minority report is the last of the pink sheets, and I'll go through that one first. The minority report makes a change to the mediation process by adding the sentence, "It is bad faith for the owner of the manufactured housing community or the owner's authorized representative to require, request, or obtain a non-disclosure agreement or similar agreement from a homeowner as part of the mediation process." So that was all that was in the minority report. The majority report includes that same phrase, but makes other changes. So I just want to confirm with Representatives Collmore, Eder, Mingo, and Walker, if the minority report, or those of you who are here, reflects what your intent was. Okay. And again, this is not the final. That will come to you electronically with a fiscal note. And then you will have, right now, we're at a 24-hour turnaround time. That may shorten, but right now it's 24 hours.
Representative Collmore.
Thank you. Is there a fiscal note anticipated for a single line like that?
I think I could go out on a limb and say probably not.
Okay, thank you.
But you're not allowed to say that.
Right, I am
Someone
not,
else has to say
I
probably.
am not OFPR.
Right.
And
Okay.
don't confuse me with them.
All right.
Okay, so the majority report, as you recall, it adds a provision that lot rent may not be increased more than once per calendar year. It changed the information that would trigger the mediation process, and what you see in front of you on the pink sheet under subsection 3 on the first page is actually worded incorrectly. It will say percent increase, not with CPI at the beginning.
What sheet are we
Oh,
looking
we're on the
at?
pink.
We're on pink.
We're on pink.
Okay.
On the first page of the amendment of pink,
Okay, thank you.
page 1 of 6. So this, you clarified what was needed to request mediation in subsection 3. I'm just pointing out that the phrasing is incorrect here. It's already been corrected by Ross. It will say percentage increase in lot rent or fees is greater than the percentage under subsection 2, paragraph G, plus 1%. So it will be the CPI plus 1%, but this is not worded correctly.
Okay.
You, as I said, on page 2, you also added that sentence about bad faith. So that's the same language as we just discussed on the minority report. And then we get into the cancellation and conversion of certificate of titles. And you're gonna want to have the pink sheet and the yellow sheet together.
Okay.
Because since the vote by the committee and since I have produced the pink sheet for you last week, there have been, and the public had access to this, there have been comments that came in.
There have been no changes to the pink sheet for that we got last week. Like, we shouldn't have a new pink sheet, correct?
Yeah, you don't have, yeah, you have the old one. And then I made a different color for today's language review. So the cancellation process and conversion process, you'll recall, was expanded so that anyone with a certificate of title can ask for their title to be canceled by the Secretary of State. Doesn't matter if they own the land or not. That the Secretary of State must give notice to the person seeking cancellation that when they cancel, if they cancel, the property is converted. In the original draft, it says it's deemed real estate, and that was, and it states somewhere else that it's deemed real estate. And that has been changed based on, well, it's subject to your approval, of course. What it is suggested, instead of deeming it real estate, that it say that upon conversion, the manufactured housing or tiny home is residential real property as defined in Title 33, Section 171, subsection 6. And I've attached that for you. That is referencing in Title 33, which is property law, Chapter 7, which is conveyance of real estate. Chapter or Section 171 is the definition of residential real property within the section of law that deals with residential property disclosures. So instead of deeming it real estate, as we discussed, that's kind of, what does that mean? The suggestion was made that it become residential real property, and it is cited the definition that exists in the property law. So that was a suggested change, which I think provides better clarity about what this property is actually being turned into.
And this is only on the majority report, correct?
That's correct.
So remember,
Yep.
so for members who are on that report, is that consistent with the intent of your vote? Any concerns? Okay. On that issue, anything else?
Let me just, it was also clarified in here that it's upon the filing of the certificate. So the Secretary of State will issue a certificate of cancellation. When that is filed recorded in the Registry of Deeds, I keep saying filing, but it's actually recorded in the Registry of Deeds. That's when the property is converted into residential real property as defined in Chapter 33. So this clarifies that that's the moment it happens, because that was a comment that was received that the bill didn't clearly state when does the magic occur? And that's when the magic occurs. So the property owner can ask for cancellation of title, can get their title canceled, and then decide never to actually file it with the Registry of Deeds. It's upon that filing that it then becomes this residential real property.
Okay.
Now I'm going to go back to, because I'm following the pink sheet. So now I'm on page 3. So this was the square footage requirements that came in Title 30A. And you'll recall that you wanted it clarified. So on page 3 at the bottom, section 3A, it's clarified that these square foot changes apply to new mobile home parks or the expansion of an existing mobile home park. So that was clarified that that's the only situation where it applies.
Yep.
And then the next couple pages are Ross revisions of the word shall not, not. And then we get to the part about the deed. So you'll recall there was language added back into Title 33 under the Short Form Deeds Act that said, if you've converted your home and you want to, and you're going to deed it or transfer it or mortgage it, that you may add this specific language. It's a may and not must, because the Short Form Deeds Act is an optional. It's a law that says you can use these forms in this language. So that on page 6, in section 2, the word must still appears, but that's already been changed by the revisor's office. So it will be optional. And then the other comment that came in, that's different from what the committee had originally voted, was this new section 9. This ties back to and when the cancellation certificate of title is canceled and it's recorded, then it's converted to residential real property as defined in Title 33. This is putting into Title 33 that same mirrored language that says if a certificate of title is canceled and converted and recorded, that property is now residential real property. So the suggestion was to add something into Title 33. So people will know. If they've never read, they don't know anything about Title 29 and certificates of title and the manufactured housing. But they're looking in this statute, this title, that they have another opportunity to come across this. So I don't view that as technical. I mean, I don't view that as substantive, but it is different than what the majority voted on. So I just want to make sure that
Mhm.
the committee is comfortable with
Mhm.
that addition.
In totality, our members that voted on the majority report, was that your intent? Yep. Yes, Senator Bailey.
It was. I just want to clarify that on page 5 in number 1, the must has been changed to a may, and then on number 2, the must has been changed to a may.
Yes,
So
it
it still
has.
says must on my pink sheet. And then in section 9 on page 6, where it says filed with the register of deed, that's been changed to recorded.
Yes, it has. And that is on the yellow sheet at the very bottom.
Oh, yes,
So
I
that's
see
the
that now.
updated. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So this is closer to the revised version? Is that what
That's
we're looking?
right.
Okay,
Yeah, hand these things out on Thursday and by Tuesday, the world has changed.
yeah. Representative Golick?
I think Senator Bailey just covered one of them. Under G on page 1, where it says the percentage change for the previous 12 months,
Yes.
I believe consider it saying the percentage change for the most recent from the date of the notice, which clarifies that they're looking at the most recent CPI data.
And you think that would be different than previous 12 months?
I think it will be clearer. And what we're struggling with this bill is clarity.
Okay.
If nobody has a problem with that.
I don't think I heard it. Can you put your mic
You know,
closer?
right now it says the percentage of change for the previous 12-month period.
Mhm.
Maybe we could consider it saying for the most recent from the date of the notice. Which clarifies that it's that most recent CPI to the date of the notice.
And Representative, could we tie it to the month so that it's not, December 12th going back, but
Right,
it's
right. I
December
just-
going back?
My understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that these can come out more than once a year. So we don't want them to be able to go pick the highest to the one that's the closest. So I'm happy with.
Anyone on the majority? Fine, have a problem with that?
And I think that you said there was some changes in number 3, because I had the clarifying the request for mediation and the CPI.
Yes.
And the line under the CPI +1, it says manufactured homes in the housing community. Possibly if we stopped right there and said, subject to the proposed what, rent fee increases? Before the May. Does that make sense?
So my understanding,
Oh, sorry, somebody's ringing in my head. Go ahead.
so I drafted it that way because I thought that the people who could ask for mediation wasn't 51% of those who were subject to the increase, but it was 50% of the entire community. And that's how yeah, that's what I recall was changed, that it was not 51% of the people subject to the increase.
Sorry. My phone's doing weird stuff now. Okay. I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
So so the prior version said you can request mediation, if it was 51% of the people subject to the increase. And we changed that. So under A, it says the number of owners representing 51% of the household can request.
So that's line A, that's
Yeah.
still there. I'm above that, where it says manufactured homes in the housing community.
Yeah.
If we stop right there and just put a line in that says subject to the proposed lot rental increases.
So I think that, so what this is saying is if something happens, owners of manufactured homes in the housing community may request mediation. And my understanding is you wanted to let all owners request mediation. If we change it the way you're suggesting, that would mean that if conditions happen, only homeowners subject to the increase can request. So it conflicts. It would make,
Even though A is underneath that.
that's how I would read what you're suggesting.
Senator Bailey?
If I might try to help, I think the confusion is the qualifier at the end of 3, where it says may request the proposed lot rent or fee increase be subject to mediation, which is just trying to clarify what's subject to mediation is just those issues. So it's not the affected people, it's the subject of the mediation. But I can see where it's a little confusing.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Wait, I got a few things wrong. I got a few things wrong in this the first time around, so I'm just trying to go through a couple of things. And I think that Senator Bailey talked about, and I'm not sure, on number 9 on page 3. Changing the filing to recording.
Yes.
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 Okay.
Yep.
It's, and if you go down below, these are just like little word things that I saw under A, where it says, with going over and talking to people, there's an underline, 3 regulations, mobile home park, same page 3. It says 4 new mobile home parks. Should that just be park?
Yes. And those are the things I fully rely on Ross to help me with.
Okay.
But it doesn't hurt to point them out.
Okay, and then I just have one more little one, I think, like that to point out too.
Okay.
On page 5. Section 8 is enacted to read, and it says 767A, deed for a manufactured housing. It should just be deed for manufactured housing.
Oh, yeah. Yep. I think that's already been made too.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, I think that's it.
Please, for those who voted on the majority, are all with those, is this language consistent with the intent of your vote? Great, thank you. And we already covered those on the minority report? Correct. All right. That's 2231. Next up, 2149.
Yes. And you may have 2 pink on this. And the one I'm working with has this big word draft on it. So I want to make.
2149.
And then Sandlin is handing out, as I said, since I handed this out last week, comments have come back about things that were either missed or could be clarified. So some of what I'm going to talk about is on the purple sheet. But to start, so this is An act to protect affordability in mobile home parks and manufactured housing communities. And this is a bill that deals largely with the transfer assessment fee. That's attached. And one of the comments that was made, two comments were made about the capital gain deduction. So if you go to the last 2 pages of the pink document, that was the change into the main revenue service, Title 36. And as you know, current law, there's a capital gains deduction. If there is a transfer, a sale of 50% of a business that provides residential housing up to 750,000, if it's sold to an affordable housing cooperative, that's current law. What you all changed was you also added qualified property. So it's not just a sale of a business that is engaged in housing, it's a sale of the actual property. And when you discussed it, I would call discussing it in terms of manufactured houses and mobile home parks. And when Maine Revenue Service came in, they suggested a definition of qualified property. And that's on the that would be subsection 3 on either of the two. And that definition of qualified property says basically mobile home parks and manufactured housing communities. The current law is broader than the sale of mobile home parks and manufactured housing communities. The current law says the sale of a business and now a qualified property. That is a business or property for affordable, for housing. If it's transferred to a cooperative, then there's this capital gains deduction. So really the addition of subsection 3, limiting qualified property in this way, I think is narrower than what the committee would have wanted. And I think what you wanted, and I have to find the right page, appears on the purple sheet. I think what you wanted to say is this capital gains deduction of up to 750,000 applies when there's a sale of qualified business or qualified property to a affordable housing cooperative or cooperative affordable housing corporation. And the definition of qualified property is not mobile home park or manufactured housing. It's real estate for which the primary purpose is to provide housing for residential use. And I think that's what you meant, because in the current law, qualified business is a business that provides housing. So qualified property would be property used for housing for residential use. So I think that, I definitely need to confirm that your intent was to allow the capital gains deduction benefit to apply to a group broader than just the mobile home parks and the manufactured housing communities.
Representative Collmore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That was not my intent. And if that is what the language changes to, I would ask for a reconsideration.
Representative Kier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think as we kind of worked on this language, we heard from the Raise Up Cooperative and some others in the cooperative space, because the statute as it exists now applies to any property. So if you have a triple decker that you sell to a cooperative, an affordable housing cooperative, that also qualifies for this tax credit. And we're not trying to remove that, but we're really just trying to say the same tax credit applies to the sale of a mobile home park or manufactured housing community. And in both of those scenarios, you can have the situation where you're a business. So say you're a property management company and you sell the business, or you're a property management company and you just sell that building. That same thing would apply just in the same way it does to a manufactured housing or mobile home park. So you can sell the business or you sell that property. If you sell the business, the only piece of it that qualifies is that part of it that is providing property for residential use in either of those scenarios. So we didn't want to muck up. I don't think it was certainly not my intention when we voted this to muck up what happens with other kinds of cooperatives that already exist in law. It was really just to clarify the mobile home park and manufactured housing, and then also to clarify that in any of those scenarios, there could be a business, but there's also then the property, and both of those needed to be defined. And I think it's the same in either of those.
Representative Collmore.
Thank you. And while I certainly understand that, I already didn't like the bill and negotiated on good faith on the fact that it was about mobile home parks and manufactured homes. And this was not how it was discussed before. So again, if this is the language that the majority wants, that's perfectly fine. I know where I stand on that, but I will ask for a reconsideration so that my name is not tied to it.
Further comment? So we have, go ahead, Chair
I
Gear.
just wanted to ask a clarifying question. So the existing law that applies to any kind of affordable housing cooperative, you can get the tax credit. I'm just trying to understand from Representative Collmore, you're saying that you were assuming that would be changed? That was your thinking when we voted the bill?
My assumption was that this change was only for manufactured housing and mobile home parks. And this language that was in here that I have already reviewed on the pink sheet and said, okay, I can deal with it. When I already hated the bill in the first place, I am not okay with changing it and opening that more broad. I didn't like the idea of doing it for property before anyway, but it was narrowly defined property. So I was willing to negotiate to do that. But if you're broadening it, my stance has not changed. I will ask for a reconsideration.
If I may, Mr. Chair, there's
Sure.
other comments that I have to point out
Sure.
on the bill, so perhaps you want to hear them all
Yep.
before you decide your next steps. On these same provisions of law, if you look at the pink sheet again, at the little bottom at the corner, well, if you look at the last page, you'll see after the sub paragraph 1 that says the deduction allowed pursuant to this paragraph may not exceed 750,000. And then it says new sentence. That's referring to this sentence down here, which was inadvertently left out. It was part of what you voted on, but it didn't make it into this document. So I just want to point out that the sentence that you voted to include is if gain from such a sale or related sales is recognized by multiple taxpayers or over multiple tax years, that gain must be aggregated for the purpose of applying the $750,000 limitation. And again, that was on the language that Maine Revenue Service provided to you that you voted on, but it was left out of this document. So I kind of want to point that out and also share that comment publicly because I've heard from members of the public. So that's just pointing that out to you.
Where is this on the blue sheet? I'm missing it.
On the pink sheet, we're on the pink sheet. So
Yeah,
the
okay.
last, section 8, subparagraph 1, that new sentence will be added after the dollar amount, 750,000. It will also be added on the page before, because you'll recall the deduction applies to corporations and individuals. So under subsection 7, they're identical provisions, but one applies to corporations and one applies to individuals. So that sentence is missing under that, also that subsection or paragraph 1.
Okay. Any concerns on that piece? I'm not addressing Representative Collmore's concerns on this one, but on that piece, does anyone have any concerns there? No. Okay,
Okay,
but we do have concerns
right.
on the prior piece. Okay,
I have a few more.
okay, we'll keep going.
The comment was also shared with me that when you voted, and let me see where I'm gonna point you to. Not gonna point you to anything. When you voted, there was suggestion that you add language that allows Maine State Housing Authority to use 5% of the mobile manufactured housing community mobile home park preservation and assistance fund for for the administrative costs that they incur because they use outside entities. That was not included in this report. And so I'm asking the committee, was it your intent when you, on the report, was it your intent when you voted this to include that language that the Main State Housing Authority can use the 5% to cover admin costs?
That's what we said on Mike, as
Right.
I recall.
Yeah,
Yes.
I just wanted to confirm that.
Okay.
The next comment will come if you look at subsection 5, which is, section 5, and I'm sorry, these pages are not numbered. So this on the pink sheet. So this bill has already been to the revisor's office a few times, and the revisor's office expressed concern that the right of first offer, I know you referred to the right of first refusal. So section 5 in the pink sheet, again, it doesn't have pages. I'm sorry about that. The right of first offer is in chapter 953, mobile home parks. It's not in chapter 951 about manufactured housing communities because most people understand that if it's in chapter 953, right of first refusal, that, and manufactured housing and mobile home parks, manufactured housing communities and mobile home parks basically have the same definition. That just because it's in one chapter doesn't mean it doesn't apply. It applies to mobile home parks and manufactured housing communities. That's what was discussed last session. That's generally how people have interpreted it. The AG's office has not expressed concern with that interpretation. The revisor's office expressed concern and said, can you please add this into 951? And I said, sure, why not? That caused a lot of problems from the public. So what I am suggesting is that you allow me to take out section 5. You didn't vote for it. It was supposed to be a purely technical change. People in the public have expressed concern with doing it. My suggestion is you say, Lynn, we didn't vote on this, take it out.
Members.
I'm acting at a disadvantage. I don't have a copy of this,
Oh,
and this is getting kind of complicated. I think we've run out of copies
okay.
still of the one with the handwritten markups on.
Let's take a 5-minute break. Make sure, does anyone else not have a copy that says draft on the bottom? You don't have one? You need to?
Yeah.
Thanks.
There we go. Yep, you can take.
Right.
Welcome back, everybody. Does everyone have paperwork?
Yes.
Okay. Is it accurate that the committee members are in agreement with the intentions that have been presented, separate from the issue that is on page 9 regarding the qualifications for tax, I've lost the section here. The qualified property and the capital gains tax. Is that, other than that, are we on the same page? Yes, Representative Callamore.
Thank you. Does that same page include canceling out section 5 that we never actually voted on in the first place? Is that what we're talking about with being on the same page?
I think that was what, that Ross presented to us and members of the public said, hey, what's that? Yeah. Striking that. Okay, so let's dive into the section that deals with the capital gains tax and and the changes that were proposed through Ross and through our analysts gauging our intent. Are there questions or ideas? Senator Bailey.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly my intent, I think it's also what I'm hearing Representative Colomar say is to not change current law, but to make it clear that we were also adding mobile home parks, and I'm just using that as a shorthand. So I'm struggling with how do we make that clear? I do think the definition in the purple perhaps goes beyond that. And that certainly wasn't my intent. I'm certainly open to reconsidering and having that discussion if that's what the committee wants to do, but that wasn't my original intent. And I'm wondering if maybe on the pink sheet number 9, if it just read for purposes of this paragraph, qualified property includes real estate or may include, and then the rest of that paragraph. So that again, we're adding mobile home parks, but we're not changing the rest of the law. But I am open to suggestions from the OPLA analyst as to what would be the best way to make that intent clear.
Yep. So I will say the reviser's office did not have comments on this provision. It was members of the public who reached out. So I think that if the intent is just to allow the capital gains to apply when a park or community, the actual physical park or community is sold, then this provision in these 2 sections is fine.
Is what?
Is fine.
So, follow up?
Yeah, I'll follow up. So just to be clear, this language, even though it says, this definition of qualified property means it's not changing any current law. It's just adding mobile home parks.
That's correct. It is
Okay.
not changing current law.
Okay. So given that, Representative Collimore, you had your hand up. Did that answer your question?
I was just trying to figure out what we meant by number 9, and I figured out it's actually 8. So
Okay.
I was lost where we were.
By number 9, we meant 8. So it sounds like we've come to agreement if that was the intent. And the language we've just does anyone else does anyone disagree that was the intent of their vote? Okay. Moving on.
Well,
Representative Gear.
so I think that when my intent, when we voted this, was to assure that when the property was sold separately from the business in the mobile home park and manufactured housing scenarios, that was also then would qualify for the tax credit. I guess I'm just raising the issue that by making this distinction in law, then it exposes the other scenario when it is not a mobile home park to a different interpretation. And so I'm just raising that as a risk. I don't think, I'm going to state for the record that I don't think we as a committee foresaw that risk because we did not look in depth at this statute. It's not a part of the law that we typically deal with in this committee. And so to me, that raises a concern because the same scenario, as I described earlier, does apply to other types of affordable housing. So other types of housing, such as buildings, such as other things. So I'm just stating for the record that it was not my intent to increase, when I voted to increase that risk in that scenario to those other kinds of cooperative affordable housing providers. And so that does raise a concern for me. I hear what everyone is saying, and I'm not sure we talked about it at this length because we did not dive into what it would do in this particular statute. So just stating that for the record.
Senator Bennett.
I'm just checking my own level of confusion here. Just to be clear, this would now make this special capital gains treatment available for either the sale of a mobile home park as a standalone asset or a group of standalone assets, or as a business, if they're part of a business sale. Both scenarios, asset sale, business sale, the same assets would be subject to that provision. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thanks.
We've already gotten the thumbs up that was our intent. That's the language. Well, and that is going to Ross and you'll get it via email.
Thank you.
Yep, Representative Collmore.
If that comes back and we're not okay with the final language, what can we do? Is my only action to roll call it on the floor and say that I've decided not to support it? Or do I do a floor amendment? Like what happens when we leave this meeting saying that's our intent, knowing that this isn't the final language and we're not meeting again?
I think that's the reality of our situations. That's when floor amendments start showing up, right?
Okay.
That's when like we found an error or this came up, and I think we've seen that, we've seen that where even to the point where it got to the governor's desk and got recalled, and there was an issue that was identified by folks and they've had to back up.
Okay.
I think that's, we're not authorized to meet. We're not going to get authorization to meet again. We're at the end. So, Senator Bennett.
Well, I just would say, if it's, everybody's agreeing on the intent here, and if it comes out in a way that doesn't reflect that intent, then I think I'd certainly join an effort to amend it on the floor. So I think that we should all be informed of that and make sure that we have some agreement on that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Last
Ms.
but not
Wesson.
least, LD 2173, which is an act to update the laws regarding housing developments and accessory dwelling units. And
Can I just say this bill feels like the year-long senior research project and it is May 3rd and we got to be presenting on it tomorrow. It is at the finish line at the last minute. So let's begin.
Let's begin. And I
Representative
will-
Collmore.
I'd just like to add to that, as the lead of the senior project, I'm ready for this to go away.
Yeah. Great appreciation, Representative Collmore.
I just want to say, Representative Collmore, you have in front of you a pile of the documents, and would you like them shared with the committee?
Yeah, I assumed they had already been shared with the
No.
committee.
They have been shared electronically, but so this is 2173, an act to update the laws regarding housing development and accessory dwelling units. And yes, we all have quite a large file for this one. You received last week a pink document. And since that time, you're now getting a yellow document. Since the pink document came out, there was some work done by an individual at Representative Collimore's behest, I was told, who worked with Director Fox to come up with changes to the draft that you had before. I am happy to walk the committee through it, but I also want to make sure that Representative Collimore has an opportunity. Okay, all right. So, the first thing I'm going to talk about is, as you know, my favorite topic, implementation dates. So what this bill does, and we're going to, I think you mostly focus on the yellow. What this version does is it leaves the current law with implementation dates that were all set at 2024. It leaves that alone. The pink document and the original bill had amendments to the current law. This approach is just leave the current law, implementation date 2024, that only applies to things that were enacted around that time. If you look at the last two pages, pages 7 and 8 of this bill, section 27 says everything that was enacted in LD 1829 has an effective date of July 1, 2027. Section 29 on the second page, page 8, says everything enacted in this bill, 2173, has an implementation date of July 1, 2027. So instead of making changes to implementation dates in statute or adding more implementation dates into statute, which is just a very messy thing, it is putting it in unallocated law that says municipalities must comply with 2173 and 1829 on July 1, 2027. So then when you change these statutes next session, we won't have to worry about the implementation dates. Well, just won't do that. I'm gonna wrap around. There's a few caveats.
You get some reactions behind you.
There's a few caveats to this, but I will say that between the reviser of statute, the director of OPLA, and myself, this is the approach that is considered the best under the circumstances. And that was what this bill, the yellow version, takes care of. But with, just want to, there's a little but. So section 28, which is on page 8, moves something that was in the bill you voted on and adds something. What section 8 talks about is two laws that were enacted last session. And you'll see it says Public Law, Chapter 288 and Public Law, Chapter 374, apply beginning July 1, 2027.
I need you to back up here.
No, that's
Section 8,
no.
page 8.
Page 8.
Section 28.
Section 28. Thank
So
you.
this is very similar. It's setting an implementation date of July 1, 2027 for two laws. The difference is these two laws are already in effect. One law has to do with one law came out of you. It was the minimum parking space requirements. And the other law came out of the HHS committee. It had to do with the location of childcare facilities in residential areas. So currently they are active law. They went into effect September of 2025, some 90 days after adjournment. What section 28 says is pause. As soon as the governor signs this, those laws are paused, and then they don't go back into effect till July 1 of 2027, which you can do. I just want to share that if someone is like Bill, there may be people out there who are relying on this current law, like I'm going to put my childcare facility there next month because this law allows it, but then the law goes away. So it would require someone to have relied on it and a municipality to then go back and impose different requirements. I don't know how how likely that is to happen, but this application date is a little different because it's pausing two laws that are currently in effect.
And remind me which ones they are? The
Um,
parking?
The minimum parking space requirements, the limitations that said you only may not require more than one off-street parking space per dwelling unit. And that allowed off-street parking agreements located within 0.25 miles. So that's the first law. The second law, as I said, came out of HHS, and that says that a childcare facility or family childcare provider can operate without an outdoor recreational space. And the other provision is that those have to be permitted uses in a municipality area that is zoned for residential use.
I guess I want, yeah. Representative Cullimore.
Thank
Wanna
you.
speak to
And
that?
if I'm remembering correctly, because like you said, this has been the senior project from hell, excuse my language, I'm sorry. It's been a worthwhile effort here to fix areas of law that were inconsistent. And the reason that that pause was added in is within this language, we are changing parts of those laws that are currently in effect and municipalities, including the fact that we have location of childcare on this one in section 23. And so we have to pause those because rules and things have to be changed to align with the changes happening in this bill. Otherwise, we'll have inconsistencies on start dates. And well, should they be planning for the new part of the law that's being passed under this? But this was the other law over here. So it was just, there's a lot of issues in that area. That is my understanding of why we were asked to do that pause on those, so that municipalities can do a one-time ordinance update change and not have to do it again with this law.
Representative Golick.
My concern is how that pause will affect or could affect, and somebody can clarify this for me. Most of the parking stuff will affect affordable housing. So if somebody's already doing this and gotten that permission, and they have to keep moving forward or getting ready to move people in, and they have to pause, what does that do to that project? Or vice versa on the childcare stuff, but the parking pause. So my question is there a way to say, unless these projects already have application in the process under the current law, that they don't have to be paused? I mean, I'm concerned that we're gonna tie up. I mean, how long is the pause for? Is it for a couple months? Is it for 6 months? That's massive money that people are investing into these projects. So I have a concern about that.
Representative Cullimore.
If it has already been permitted, this doesn't stop them from being able to continue to do what they've already been permitted to do. This is telling the municipalities they have longer to comply for the ones who have not already started complying. So, for example, my town couldn't afford to do ordinance changes yet. So this allows them to have a little more time to do everything all at once, because it's very expensive to post this stuff in the newspapers. And so they don't have to do it twice. That is it. We looked into that part of it. It should not stop anybody who's already started and already having permits. Towns aren't going to withdraw those permits from the housing stuff unless you're hearing otherwise, but I have not heard that that's an issue.
Ms. Westfall.
I guess, would they be
I'm
allowed?
going to ask Ms. Westfall to answer the question.
So my understanding is what Representative Cullimore said is correct. If they already have a permit, then they have what's called a vested right. And if a municipality tried to withdraw it, they would have legal action against the municipality. I mean, that's general legal principle. I think the people, I think, those people who are in the planning stages, they could potentially be affected, but then only if the municipality says, no, we're going to apply some old law to you. We're not going to, we know the new law's coming. And the municipality imposes something more stringent. But people who are permitted, I agree with Representative Cullimore. I think that they have a legal right to continue.
Representative Callamore.
I think it's also to keep in mind that this section isn't in the affordable housing section. So this isn't even going to impact affordable housing. That's a different section of law. This is for the general parking requirements that we, if you remember, defeated, and then it came back and it became law because the vote swung. So this has nothing to do with the affordable housing part of this law.
I just needed to make sure that this isn't something that's going to cause housing in general. If somebody already permitted, it sounds like it don't, but what about that person that's in the process? That has already spent all the money for their geoengineering and all this other stuff, and they're on a line and they're going through the process. And all of a sudden, the town says, we're gonna pause it. How long is that pause? Is it long enough for them to run out of money, or is it until, I have concerns about that section for what it will do. And maybe it will do nothing. Maybe I'm overreacting, but it's a thought.
Representative Julia.
I can speak to that a little bit. Generally, like, for example, if you get planning board approval and then city council approval for a project, when that project was approved by planning board, those are the rules that you have to adhere to. Going forward, once this is updated in a municipality, then the planning board will apply that to the things, but nothing's usually, I shouldn't say nothing, but almost nothing is active in that context.
Representative Mallon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to chime in and say I'm very confident that this language will not pause housing development any more than we have already expressly voted to do.
All right, I'll move on. So the yellow document you have has the red lines along the side to show you where changes are made. Majority of them are not substantive. So I'm skipping most of them. For example, on the first page in section 2, under the definition of public sewer system, the phrase division of a municipality is removed. That was suggested because there currently are no public sewer systems that are a division. It's legally allowed, but it's not in current. So that seems like a minor change. On page 2, you'll see the red line. That's getting rid of the implementation phrases that I've already talked to you about. On page 3, it's showing you that lovely paragraph that's being removed from one section of law that not the other two. Remember, we enacted it last year in 3 sections. That's just showing you what is being repealed. That you won't see this in the final version because that's not how you repeal things, but it was put here so you could see it. The next section, section 9, is another change to the language. It's up to you whether you think it's substantive or not, or just technical. The committee voted that a municipality may exempt certain areas from high density if it's in a coastal sand dune, flood zone, or coastal barrier resource center. The way it was drafted originally in the pink version said it's exempt if they identify it in a comp plan or through an ordinance or a regulation. What this says is it's exempt if they identify it in an ordinance. So it limited the mechanisms that can be used. And so
Can you direct me? You said section 9?
On section 11.
Oh, sorry, yes. On page 4, in the middle of the paragraph, middle of the page, that subsection B. It crosses out. It says that it's exempt if it's done in a duly adopted ordinance. So it removes 2 other options.
Representative Callamore.
Thank you. So in looking through that, what we learned is that the comprehensive plan isn't something that could be enforceable for this, which is why it could only be in the ordinance language. And if you think about the fact that a comp plan is done every 10 years, does that mean if they've updated their ordinances to allow it, they can't allow it because their comp plan said it, so it would just made it more sense and enforceable when it was in the ordinances versus in the comprehensive plan. And not every town has a comprehensive plan.
Thank you. Let's see. I'm just gonna. The next change is on the bottom of page 5, top of page 6. So this was the language that talks about limitations on municipal ordinances when it's in a designated growth area, but it does not have public sewer. What you see at the bottom of page 5 crossed out, I believe what you voted on. Well, actually, it's some version that you considered in the past. What at the bottom of page 5, the new subsection C over to page 6 is what was requested that Director Fox draft for you. So it says, if a lot is located in a designated growth area without public sewer system, minimum lot size requirement may not exceed 20,000 square feet. And the density requirement or calculation may not be more restrictive than required by Title 12, Chapter 423A. So it really is making a small change to current statute. And that was what the change that was requested to be shown to you.
This is not the section that deals with 10,000 or 20,000, or is it that section?
No, it's the next section, C.
Okay,
Yeah, so yeah, those are designated and served.
right, okay, thank you.
It's the designated, not served by public.
Okay. Representative Callamore?
Thank you. And this was done actually as a result of a problem that Lynn identified when we had a discussion about the language before it went out on Thursday. And it was that we shouldn't be attaching it to the rules of another department because that could become confusing, but the rules say 20,000 square feet, so we just pulled that out. And so that made it very clear in statute rather than a moving target.
Good. Let's continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So that is the majority of the changes. I just will mention that there are in current law in those sections some random implementation dates. They're usually at the end of the sections. If anyone wants the citations, I can give them to you, but one says this subsection, a municipality is not required to implement the requirements of this section until the implementation date. There's a couple of them that Ross and I had already worked and identified as those really should be removed with the goal that you leave current law alone as much as possible and put the implementation dates in the unallocated provisions. So I just want to point out that there's a couple more that you'll see are repealed. But again, it's just with that purpose in mind. And that is all I have on this.
Representative Callamore?
Thank you. And just on that line, does that mean we should, because I think we may have missed it when we were going through this. I don't know how. But like section 25 has an implementation date listed still. And should that be removed because we've done the unallocated? Did we leave that in accidentally?
Yes.
Okay.
That's one of the ones that I've identified is that one. Yes.
What is the will of the committee? What does the community members need? Representative Golick?
Trying not to belabor here, but I do have a couple of questions that haven't been fully answered for me about the two laws being postponed. And my question about changing it to ordinance, does that mean that a town can just change an ordinance so that they don't have to abide by what we're trying to do?
I think,
And not,
can
It-
our analyst address that question of the use of the ordinance? What can the town opt out of with the use of that ordinance or opt into?
So it would be the town saying, this is an area of the town that's either within a coastal barrier resource system, a special flood hazard area, or a coastal dune system. So here's an area of, they'll have an ordinance that says, in this area of town, which is within one of those, that section, that part of the, is exempt from the density requirements, the up to four dwelling unit requirements, and the ADU requirements. So the ordinance is just saying, here's the areas that the law, which is in here, allows us to exempt from the increased development.
So from those very limited areas,
Yes,
coastal,
yes.
coastal
Coastal.
flooding.
Yep.
Say those again, please.
Coastal barrier resource system, special flood hazard area, and coastal sand dune systems.
Okay, that answers
So,
the
so
ordinance.
the
question.
town can limit in that. Thank you. Is committee ready to say that this is their intent? Is their intent? Was this the intent of the vote?
Yes.
That's the language review. Excellent. Do we have Representative Golick? Thank you. Do we have any other bills for language review?
We do not.
And remind us on the standard for language review?
So currently it's at 24 hours. In a week or so, it might get shorter, but currently you will get an email from me that has the final Ross version along with the fiscal note. And I will tell you what time. And if something in there is not what you think it should be, then you can send me an email back. But as you've already discussed, because we aren't meeting, there is very limited things that I can do. I can help you if something is incorrect. I can help you draft a floor amendment. And that is
Okay.
always an option.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay.